Welcome back everybody, Addison with S4 Suspension here, and today we're talking about mounting hardware. Mounting hardware. What is it and why is it important? Mounting hardware is a replaceable interface that goes between the eyelet of your shock and the mounting location on your bike. Typically, they're made of a combination of metal, plastic, or even some polymers. What tools are you going to need for today's process? Well, you need some form of an extraction tool, of which I have quite a few different varieties, and I'll explain more about those momentarily. You'll need a set of calipers to measure your mounting hardware. Make sure you've got the correct size. A vise with a set of soft jaws to aid in reinstalling everything. Some waterproof grease to put between all the surfaces to help prevent water ingress and add a little extra lubrication. And I would recommend a rag also to clean up as you go along. There's a few things that you should check before beginning this process. One is that you have the correct interface style. Today we're going to be talking about the three most common. We've got a TCA style, we've got a DU, and then we also have a bearing style interface. TCAs are going to be part of a 5-part system where 2 TCA bushings are pushed directly into the eyelet. A mounting pin is going to go through the center, which allows for the bolt to go through the middle. Then 2 spacers are going to go on the outside to adapt to different frame widths. A DU is going to be part of a 4-part system, where a DU bushing is pushed directly into the eyelet with a mounting pin pushed directly through the middle, and 2 external spacers that are going to adapt for different frame widths. A less common type you'll see is a 3-part system, which utilizes a DU bushing with 2 aluminum spacers pushed directly into it. Lastly, on the mounting hardwares we'll talk about today is a bearing interface. This is going to have 2 bearing races pushed directly into the eyelet. Now in this moment, it may be possible that you're saying to yourself, but Addison, what if I don't have any mounting hardware? Or what if my mounting hardware looks different to what you've showed me here? Well, there are some proprietary systems that different bike manufacturers use. I'm going to always recommend check with your bike manufacturer. They're going to have the specifics on your bike and your shock and your setup on what it's supposed to be. But there are some proprietary ones out there. I just can't cover them all here today. 1, I don't have access. 2, the list is very long and I don't want to miss one. Here at S4, we prefer the 5-piece interface. This is going to be a TCA bushing with a center pin and 2 external spacers. We feel this provides the best in durability and longevity and the best experience for you at home. Now that we know a little bit about what mounting hardware is, let's get started on the process of extracting, measuring, and replacing your hardware. Before removing our old hardware, we want to take the opportunity to measure it to confirm that our new hardware is the right size. We need the width of the mounting pin, and we also need the inner diameter or the ID of the mounting pin. Okay, but what if your shock doesn't have mounting hardware currently on it? Well, that's easy. You can find that measurement by measuring the width of your frame mounting point where your shock goes. You'll need the outer diameter or the OD of your mounting bolt. And with this method, you will need to take into account any spacers that your frame might utilize for mounting your shocks. We're going to start with a TCA style interface. It's our preferred here at S4, and coincidentally, it's actually the easiest to work on. So we're going to need our vise for this process. We're going to need a bushing extraction tool, a giant bolt, or maybe even a chopstick if you've got one of those laying around. And I'll show you why here in just a moment. To remove this old mounting hardware, we're actually going to set this shock slightly diagonally within the vise. This is going to allow us to begin to extract this pin. We're going to open the vise up far enough to put the extraction tool and the shock within inside of it. We want to offset the shock just enough to where the pin will begin to extrude out the other side, and then you slowly close the vise. You'll get to a point where you'll be able to extract the pin. Once you successfully remove this mounting pin, there's a few different ways to take this TCA out. You can actually use your extraction tool like you did before. You can potentially use a chopstick if you've got one of those laying around, or my preferred method is take a bolt, a large bolt that has threads on it. What you'll do is you'll actually hook it just inside to where the teeth of the bolt bite against the TCA. Then you'll just pry at an angle and it'll come out just like that. But we'll do it with the chopstick this time so you can see that. You'll insert the chopstick or whatever you're using and then pry sideways and it'll come out just like that. Now your TCA is out. take the opportunity to clean up your eyelet, make sure there's no residual dirt laying around, and we'll begin the process of pushing it back in. I always like to do it one side at a time to make sure it's going in nice and square and even. Here, if you use the fixed side of the vise that doesn't move, push your shock with a TCA against it. It will allow you to hold that TCA in place while you use the other side of the vise to press it in. Open your vise back up and do the same with the other side. A note while you're here, if it doesn't look like it's going in properly, stop and reassess. It should go in fairly easily. There shouldn't be any kind of binding or difficulty really at all. Once you get it in, do not continue to close the vise because you can crush these TCAs. They're very soft. At this point, you'll put just a tiny bit of grease inside of your TCA, and this acts as just a little water ingress barrier as well as extra lubrication for smooth operation. Push your mounting pin nice and squarely into your TCA until it stops. It will stop once it becomes flush with this outer face. You'll need to slightly offset your mounting hardware in the vise just to extract this outer edge. Once you've extended the pin beyond the surface face of the TCA, you'll want to install the little rubber band that comes with the kit. That is to further prevent water ingress. Install your width spacer. That's going to allow you to push this pin all the way. Put it back in your vise, close the vise until it stops, and now your mounting pin is nice and flush against the face of your mounting surface. All you need to do now is flip it over, add your rubber band and your mounting spacer to this side. Tighten your vise until it stops, and then you got everything all dialed in. Nice flush faces on your mounting surface. What if you have a DU bushing? Well, this one's fairly simple as well. It just takes a little more effort. You're gonna wanna use a DU bushing tool that slides within itself. This is crucial. This is gonna make your life a whole lot easier. On your bushing tool, you've got this guide pin and this catch. So this guide pin will actually slide inside of the catch pin here with this opening where the bushing has room to go. Slide your pushing pin through and then your guide or your catch pin over. Once you get it inside the vise, you're just gonna close the vise down. And this does take some significant force with the DU bushing. It's quite a bit tighter than a TCA. This is why you use the correct tool, because everything works really easily. Then it comes out of your shock just like that. Again, take the opportunity to wipe off your eyelet, make sure everything's nice and clean. With the DU bushing, we're actually going to add grease to our eyelet. Just a little dollop of grease inside. Take your pinky and smear it around. This is going to help it so that DU pushes back in a little bit easier. To install the DU, you're going to take your push pin, slide your DU over it, slide your DU in, and then using the flat face side of your catch pin, all you're going to do is continue to rotate your vise and close it down until you feel it bind and stop. Once it binds and stops, your DU is pushed in and all the way flat. Once you have your DU bushing installed, you can push your mounting pin through just like you did on the TCA. We'll slowly push the pin in until it stops. Just slightly offset the shock and the pin inside of the vise. This will allow you to begin to push out this pin on the other side. You can just slide your mounting spacers on, put it in the vise, clamp it all down, and once again, you've got a nice flush mounting surface to put on your bike. Okay, so now you know how to utilize a TCA and a DU style bushing. But what if you have a bearing style interface? Well, those are exceptionally easy because typically they press directly into the eyelet themselves, but you will need some proprietary tooling. So I'll show you a little bit more about that. The disadvantage to the bearing style is that each company has proprietary tools for them. We've got your Fox tool set up here, and then Rocky Mountain's got their own tools, and then RockShox got their own tools. And that kind of goes for all the bearing setups. They all take specialized tools because you'll actually use a tool to grab hold of these flanges and actually extract it from the eyelet itself. For these bearing style interface, I would recommend going onto the manufacturer of your bearing kit's website. They're going to have a step-by-step direction on how all these proprietary tools are actually utilized. Once you get ready to put them back together though, it's fairly simple. You're going to take it, you're going to push one side of your bearing in till it stops. Most of the time, they will have a secondary guide pin that will act as a sleeve for the internal. Open your vise up, and then again, clamp it down until it stops. Then your bearings are in and you're ready to put it back in your bike. Once you're finished installing your mounting hardware, It's a great practice to throw your shock in the vise, by the mounting hardware of course, confirming that you've got nice, smooth rotation around your mounting hardware. Make sure nothing is binding, and also jiggle it side to side. Make sure there's no looseness or play in your mounting hardware. This is to confirm that everything is working as it should, because that mounting hardware is going to be rotating slightly whenever it's in your bike, and that's what creates the smooth movement of your suspension. Congratulations, you've now successfully installed your mounting hardware and confirmed that it's working properly. Time to put your shock back in your bike. If you need help with that, there's a how to install your shock video on our tech help section. As for me, for now, it's time to get back into the shop to continue to make your ride smoother.